appreciate the invitation. We drove over, I'm here with two of my children. We drove over from the Edgefield area, which is where I live. And it's been an exciting ride down the river the Lord has provided for me in getting involved with this movement to end abortion in South Carolina. I helped now Senator Richard Cash in his primary campaign against Lindsey Graham. And through that relationship with him, he recruited me to the board of Personhood, South Carolina. And then when he was elected to the seat vacated by now Lieutenant Governor Kevin Bryant, I became the executive director of Personhood, South Carolina. So it's just kind of been one little step along the way for me coming to this point in my life. You know, they are babies inside the womb. I really appreciate this gentleman here who emphasized that so well for us. And we're going to talk about tonight what's going on in America, particularly in South Carolina. I want to talk to you about what is the personhood philosophy. I want to open that up for you. We can talk about together. It's something that we're probably all very familiar with. I also want to look closely at the South Carolina GOP platform. It's a really well-written statement on the right to life. And through the discussion, show you, I think it's very clear that the South Carolina GOP platform is a personhood platform, and that the Personhood Act of South Carolina, which is now alive and well in the South Carolina legislature with more momentum than we have ever had, is the perfect expression of the South Carolina GOP platform. And it's a tough topic. We all know that what we're going to be talking about tonight is very heavy, and it deservedly so. This is human life we're talking about. 45 years ago, many of you probably know, a couple weeks ago marked the 45th anniversary of that tremendous mistake of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. They were dead wrong. They were morally wrong, they were scientifically wrong, and they were legally wrong, they were historically wrong, they were constitutionally wrong, they were dead wrong. And the question is, you know, I love that creed for the South Carolina Republican, to be uncommon and to cower before no man. And that's what we have to ask ourselves. Are we going to be uncommon as South Carolinians, or are we going to cower like others? The governor came to our Personhood Day, and the entire executive branch of South Carolina is on board for Personhood. The governor's promised to sign it if we can get it to him. And during his speech, at the end of his remarks, he said, I believe South Carolina is going to be on the vanguard for our nation and for this world of changing this notion about the right to life. And so that's the question. Are we going to have the courage, the moral clarity and courage as a state to rise up and to be the first state to directly challenge Roe v. Wade and to end this madness in our state? And that is, let me tell you very clearly, that's what Personhood South Carolina is about. We're not interested in regulating this. This is the direct, intentional killing of an innocent baby, and we intend to end it. And we will not stop until we are successful. So that's what our organization is about. So what is personhood? Personhood, we believe, is the essence of the pro-life movement. Anyone involved in the pro-life movement believes that the essence of what we are after is the restoration of equal legal protection for every baby in South Carolina, beginning at conception without exception. And so this is what we are laser focused on. We have no comment when it comes to any other legislation. We are not going to get into battles with others who are doing good things. We are focused on personhood and getting it enacted in our state, and then walking it through the courts and seeing this madness end in our state. That's what personhood is about. So life begins at conception. That's the first thing I want to talk to you about tonight. We know from the scriptures that each and every one of us, we are made by God in His image, tenderly, carefully, uniquely. Our Father weaves us together inside the womb. We are not accidents of biology or physiology. We are individually created by God, made in God's image by God. The Bible tells us God knew us before He made us. So this concept is the foundation of jurisprudence in all civilized societies, and it is what led to the foundation of the Western world. And our founders knew this. Now, they didn't have the scientific information that we have now. We know now, without any uncertainty, that a new human being begins at fertilization. New DNA. New DNA. And from that moment forward, which we also call conception, From the moment of conception forward, it is a unique human being, internally self-directed in its growth and development, not relying upon anyone else for anything except for food and shelter, just like you and me. That is a unique human being from the moment of conception. Now, our founders, they knew Blackstone. He was the leading legal scholar of the day. He said that the rights that belong to anyone who is born also belong to the baby. So any rights that a person outside the womb has, a person inside the womb has. That's the legal climate that they wrote these words when they said that we've all been endowed by our Creator with the unalienable right to life, the first right. And to this end, governments have been established for the securing of these rights. And so our elected officials, they can clamor on about $2 billion that have been lost, and that's good. We've got to fix that. But we need to rise up and tell them your first duty is to secure the right to life. That must be the highest legislative priority for anyone who wants to call themselves a statesman, a leader. A political ruler is given the exact responsibility to protect life. So we're passionate about this, as you can tell. So life begins at conception. We know this from Scripture. We know this from science. And our founders knew this, and they placed it into our founding documents with that wonderful phrase, endowed by our Creator with the unalienable right to life. This is the concept that life begins at conception. Our founders knew this. Equal protection under the law is what we're after. And we ask ourselves, what is this phrase about? What do we mean by equal protection under the law? Well, the Fifth Amendment of our Constitution and the 14th Amendment of our Constitution come to mind when we use these types of phrases. And the big picture is that the word person there, for both those who were the authors of the Fifth Amendment and those who were the authors of the 14th Amendment, unequivocally, with historical study, you can tell the original intent of that word would have absolutely included babies inside the womb. And this is part of the reason why the Supreme Court of the United States got it dead wrong in 1973, is they ignored the original intent of that word person. And so equal protection under the law means that we provide the same protection for babies in the womb than we do outside the womb. And that's the essence of the 14th Amendment. I'll read it to you. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's the 14th Amendment. And did you know that's the amendment that the Roe v. Wade court used to make their horrible decision? Now, listen to this fascinating historical information. Did you know this? It's a book, Compelling Interest, written by a man named Riesler. He says, it is noteworthy that the same congressmen who voted for the 14th Amendment had also created, voted for, and enacted laws in the federal territories of Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, and Nevada that made the performance of abortion on a woman being with child a crime. To argue that the creators of the 14th Amendment would have approved of their amendment as the basis of a fundamental right of privacy that included a woman's decision to have an abortion is to argue in blatant contradiction to historical facts. These were the same legislators who had created tough anti-abortion laws. Did you know that? And I'll say, just as an aside, it's good news that our current president is appointing originalists, and that his litmus test for these justices in the courts and on the Supreme Court is that they must be originalists. So we have hope that they will actually overturn Roe v. Wade when we get them this bill. Did you know that the Supreme Court has overturned its own rulings more than 200 times? Did you know that Plessy versus Ferguson, that horrible, wicked, separate but equal nonsense, was law in our country for 58 years? Roe v. Wade is at 45. And they finally overturned it with Brown v. Board of Education. We've got to have history. We've got to understand the flow of history to see where we are and to ask ourselves if we're going to believe the nonsense that nothing can be done about this. Or are we going to take steps to fix this? Justice Rehnquist, one of my heroes, he said in dissent in the Roe case, here's what he said about the original intent of the 14th Amendment. To reach its result, the court necessarily has had to find within the scope of the 14th Amendment a right that was apparently completely unknown to the drafters of the amendment. By the time of the adoption of the 14th Amendment in 1868, There were at least 36 laws enacted by state or territorial legislatures limiting abortion. While many states have amended or updated their laws, 21 of the laws on the books in 1868 remain in effect today. There apparently was no question concerning the validity of this Texas provision or of any of the other state statutes when the 14th Amendment was adopted. The only conclusion possible from this history is that the drafters of the amendment itself did not intend to have the 14th Amendment withdraw from the states the power to legislate with respect to this matter of abortion. So we need to say it loud. We need to say it clear. We need to say it often. We need to say it over and over. We need to say it every time we get a chance, every time it comes up. The Supreme Court of the United States in 1973 in Roe v. Wade was dead wrong. And this is how we approach this from a Personhood, South Carolina perspective. We're going right to the belly of the beast. We want this done away with in our state. We believe we can. Their decision contradicted sound morality. Now we know even more it contradicts sound science. And we believe absolutely it contradicted the real meaning of the Constitution of our nation. So the personhood philosophy intends to engage with the Supreme Court. The legal philosophy is intended to draw this challenge. We intend to be standing there someday. If not us, then someone else doing the same thing. Now, what about this concept of without exception? You heard me use that phrase. We want to, because these babies, everyone, are made in God's image, tenderly, carefully, from the moment of conception, we want to provide, as all good states should do, legal protection for everyone beginning at conception. That's what equal protection of the laws is all about. That's what America is supposed to be all about. That's what we say in our Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all. We're not doing it, are we? So we're planning to change that. Now, without exception is a critical part of the personhood philosophy. And we're so convinced of this that we're not going to let you get away with calling yourself pro-life with exceptions anymore. No. Pro-life with exceptions is a self-contradiction. It cannot stand the test of logic or morality. And so no exceptions means it's never acceptable to kill a baby. Never. So let's talk about these tough situations, rape and incest. These are horribly tragic situations. And society, family, church must come around these poor women and love them and comfort them and provide them the compassion and care that they need during this time. And we also have to say that it's not the baby's fault. You don't punish a baby for the crime of its father. You punish the rapist, not the baby. And so the foundations of personhood teach us that that baby was crafted by God as well. Did the Lord choose not to craft that baby in its mother's womb because of the circumstances surrounding that baby's conception? Of course not. Of course not. And associated with this conversation is information now available that we believe will help us get cert with the Supreme Court. In 1973, they didn't know that abortion was going to be such a tragic occurrence in the lives of so many women in America. They didn't know. They didn't have the data. We have the data now. Abortion hurts women. It doesn't help women. Abortion hurts them psychologically. Abortion hurts them physically. And the post-abortion counseling and help that is available through wonderful organizations is so important. Women are being harmed by abortion. They're not helped by abortion. I spoke to an OB friend the other day, and he told me he's been practicing OB for over 20 years. He said, I have never heard a woman regret keeping her baby. But I hear woman after woman after woman come in here and tell me how she's been harmed by abortion. And we have this data. It's legally admissible evidence. It's proven. It's beyond a shadow of a doubt proven that women are harmed by abortion. And so we really can't argue that the baby is at fault and allow this to occur, to have its unalienable right to life removed. There's also a great law in South Carolina, the safe haven law. The claim is made you can't force a woman to raise this baby? And the answer is South Carolina's already answered that. There's a safe haven law in South Carolina where a woman who gives birth and can't take care of the baby or won't take care of the baby, anonymously she can take this baby to approved locations, a firehouse or a hospital or police station, and drop the baby off in the state of South Carolina. We'll help take care of that baby. We need to adopt, don't we? Adoption is a great plan. There's the same idea with fetal malformations, right? Babies that are very sick. We want to put these exceptions into the laws that say it's okay to kill a baby because it's sick. And the answer is, well, is the baby alive? I mean, if you get diagnosed with cancer and the doctor tells you that you're going to die in a couple of weeks, should it be okay for your wife or your husband to just put you to death so they don't have to deal with it until you die? No, of course not. We understand that this doesn't make sense if we just think about it a little bit. It doesn't make sense. And same as the other situation, we can tell story after story of redemption, the redemptive power of life. Dear friends, she gave birth to a baby with Potter syndrome, no kidneys, no lung development, guaranteed to die upon death. And they planned that baby's baptism, birthday, and funeral for one day. And all the children gathered around and they loved on that baby and they took their pictures, and it is a story of redemption and life and goodness that came into that family. It wasn't a story of just horrible worsening of tragedy. No. Killing that baby would have made the tragedy worse. And so we need to understand the full breadth of what we can do as a society to help in these tragic situations and to provide the support that these women need, that these families need in these difficult times. And we can do this. We can do this. We don't have to kill babies anymore. Now, there are some other situations that need to be clarified. They're not exceptions, they're clarifications. The life of the mother situation is important. If a mom is dealing with a pregnancy emergency, the doctor needs to take all necessary steps according to medical standards to save both the life of the mother and the life of the baby. And there's really good amendment language that's coming that will clarify this. It will make it abundantly clear that the Personhood Act of South Carolina is not an attack on mothers. That's the lies from those who like to continue killing babies and making money off of it. That's the lies of the Planned Parenthood folks who make billions and billions of dollars per year. Their spokesperson should not even be allowed to go on TV getting paid by Planned Parenthood to argue this nonsense. They're clearly biased. So the Personhood Act of South Carolina is not out to hurt women. It's not out to take away fertility treatments. It's not out to do any of those things. It's to do one thing: stop the killing. And that's what we're going to do. We'll craft language to make it very clear as necessary to do that. Did you know that, here, everybody say this with me, 5,736. 5,736. That's how many babies were murdered inside the womb in South Carolina in 2016, according to final DHEC stats that I can get to you if you'd like to see them. Assuming the baby killers work 6 days per week, that's about 18 babies per day. That's how my internal clock ticks when these legislators ask me to be patient. When these senators tell us to be patient, we've been patient for 45 years. We need to rise up and let them know that we insist that they stop the killing. And if they don't, we will make sure that their constituents understand that they did not the next time that there's a time for voting. There's nothing more important than protecting life. So what does the South Carolina... Okay, so I've given you the personhood philosophy, and a bit of my heart has come out here, as you can see. Tell me, can anyone just off the top of their head give me a couple of the key phrases from the South Carolina GOP platform on right to life? So this is good. This is really good. Let me read it to you. And I think what you're going to see, the point I want to make to you, is that, as I've said, the South Carolina Personhood Act is the perfect expression of the South Carolina GOP platform. Here's what it says. I'm just going to give you some of the more important phrases and then go through them. And this is from 2012, is the last time it was updated, according to the website. The South Carolina Republican Party affirms the Jeffersonian Declaration that life is the first inalienable right. We grieve the loss of over 35 million innocent lives, and now it's closer to 60 million, innocent lives lost to abortion since Roe v. Wade in 1973. We acknowledge that all human life, born and unborn, has intrinsic worth. We believe that the unborn and the newborn child have a fundamental right to life which must not be infringed. Accordingly, we believe that the 14th Amendment's protection should apply to unborn children. We support the reversal of Roe v. Wade through judicial action or through passage of a constitutional human life amendment. We anticipate the day when our unborn children will be classified as legal persons rather than as legal property. The party believes that the right to life, as stated in the Declaration of Independence and affirmed in the Constitution, is inalienable and foundational. Without the right to life, there can be no other right. Therefore, the party supports vigorous legal protection of the vulnerable at all stages of life. So, here's what we see from the South Carolina GOP platform. We see a life begins at conception platform. Listen to this. Vigorous legal protection when? At all stages of life. That's beginning at conception. That's in the GOP platform. And this is identical to the personhood philosophy. It is a no exceptions platform. Life is the first unalienable right. Do you hear that? You cannot separate the right to life from any human being without due process of law. All human life, born and unborn, has intrinsic worth. All human life. You hear that? That all human life is such an important phrase. That's a comment on the circumstances surrounding an individual's conception or how healthy or sick they are. All human life has this unalienable right. It's a no exceptions platform. The unborn child has a fundamental right to life which must not be infringed. It's inalienable, it's foundational, and this is identical to the personhood philosophy. We also see here the strategy, the restoration of equal legal protection. You heard it. We believe the 14th Amendment's protection should apply to unborn children. We support the reversal of Roe v. Wade through judicial action. We're not dodging the federal courts. We're not dodging the Supreme Court. We have a date with the federal courts. We have a date with the Supreme Court, and we intend to go there. And the Attorney General is on board. Did you know that? The Attorney General of our state is on board, is signed personhood, and he said he will stand for it and he will fight for it. The entire executive branch of our state is on board for this. The restoration of equal legal protection. Listen to this wonderful phrase. We anticipate the day when our unborn children will be classified as legal persons rather than as legal property. And again, this is identical to the personhood philosophy. So now, with all of that information in your brain in 23 minutes, I've done a pretty good job so far. I'm going to try to get done. Under 30. I got to keep moving. I want to read to you the key sections of the document, the Personhood Act of South Carolina. Listen carefully for these key phrases that we've already touched on. The General Assembly finds as follows regarding the sanctity of life. The General Assembly acknowledges that the July 4th, 1776 Declaration of Independence is one of the organic laws of the United States of America found in the United States Code. The General Assembly acknowledges that all persons are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The General Assembly acknowledges that personhood is God-given, as all men are created in the image of God. The General Assembly finds that the preamble to the Constitution of the State of South Carolina contains the sovereign people's acknowledgement of God as the source of constitutional liberty, saying, "We the people of the State of South Carolina in convention assembled, grateful to God for our liberties, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the preservation and perpetuation of the same." The General Assembly finds that a human being is a person at fertilization. The right to life for each born and preborn human being vests at fertilization. The rights guaranteed by Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution of this state, that no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law, nor denied the equal protection of the laws, vest at fertilization for each born and preborn human being. This article is enacted pursuant to the power preserved to the state under the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And so we expect that if this law is passed and signed by the governor, that at that moment it would become illegal to kill babies in our state, because the person concept would be applied throughout all of our statutes, and all the laws regarding violent crimes would then be applied to protecting babies within the womb. So that's where we are. That's what we're seeking to accomplish, and we intend to keep moving until we complete the goal and learn along the way as we go. So I hope that I've persuaded you that there's nothing more important than restoring the right to life for these babies in our nation right now. And that while there's a lot of other important things that have to be done, we're not calling for a shutdown of government. while there's a lot of other important things that need to be done, you do not deserve to be an elected official if this is not your top legislative priority. It's an easy thing to say. Will you promise to protect my life? Well, there's a lot of other things that we've got to look into. We've got the budget. Okay, next candidate, please. Okay? It's not complicated, is it? It's very straightforward. And so we have to rise up and understand how to judge these candidates who place themselves before us. And not just what they say, what they do. And this is where you come in. We are watching the elected officials very closely. And we are chronicling exactly how every one of them responds to personhood. We have elections that occur, and we send out personhood pledges to candidates, and some people respond and some people don't, and we let their constituents know. And we do other things, watching during the course of the session to see how folks are responding. So quick update. I told you about the executive branch. We also have promises from the leaders in the House that they will pass it and get it done as soon as we get it to them from the Senate. So the big story right now is the obstruction that's taking place in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And, do you really know what's going on inside someone's heart? No, but if I had time to list for you all the things that have happened since January of 17, I think you'd probably conclude it's being obstructed as well. That's our biggest need right now. We have 22 South Carolina senators that have committed to support this bill on the floor. We've never had this kind of momentum before. If we get one more co-sponsor or one more commitment, we can say we now have a majority of South Carolina senators in favor of this bill. We'll just get one more. But it's stuck in judiciary, and the chairman canceled another meeting for tomorrow. He's canceled 4 of the first 6 standing meetings since the beginning of this year. And one of the 4 that did take place only lasted for an hour. So right now our biggest need, you can pray, is for this bill to be safely brought forth from the Judiciary Committee. And I do want to pause right there. I appreciated some things that I heard earlier. This is a spiritual battle. We cannot ignore the spiritual component of what is going on here. I'm going to preach. Sorry, I'm a pastor too. You invited me, I was a pastor. Okay. So the devil came to kill, steal, and destroy, right? And what a better place to kill, steal, and destroy than through the civil magistrate, through our elected officials, right? And so we can conclude safely there are droves of demonic deception activity going on in Columbia. And if the state of South Carolina does not repent of our own sins, that means you, Christian, and me, if we do not repent of our own sins before God, we cannot ever expect to see any real spiritual power or change in Columbia. So Personhood, South Carolina, our first desire before God is for revival across the state. For the people of South Carolina to fall down and worship Jesus and give him thanks for his death upon the cross. And rejoice in his resurrection and understand there is an unbreakable connection between worshiping the one true God in spirit and truth and the health of your politics. There's an unbreakable connection there. So we understand that. And so my call, first and foremost, whenever we go out, is prayer. Prayer and repentance. And are you walking close to God? You, the people of God, are you walking close to God? And then prayer. Devote yourself to prayer. You talk more on your knees to God than you do on your phone to your elected official. This is the path to success. We know this is why Roe v. Wade happened in the first place. It's because we got off our knees and we forgot about God. So the first thing is prayer. Practically speaking, if Senator Hugh Leatherman, we're in Florence County, aren't we? Yes. Yeah, okay, and he's your senator, right? And he's like the most powerful guy in South Carolina, right? And that's what I've heard. I mean, I'd love to meet him sometime, say hello, and thank him for all of his great work. I mean, he does such a great job. If Senator Leatherman would rise up and say, you know what, we need to pass this bill. And if he would just do that, it would be done in like 2 or 3 weeks. He is such a powerful man in the Senate. If he came on board, there are so many others that would get on board and it would just happen. So what can you do? I bet some of y'all might even know his home phone number or something. So I want to ask you to rise up and implore him to speak out in favor of this bill as soon as possible and to voice his support for rescuing these babies as soon as possible. That's the main reason I drove over here tonight, is to get to this point and to hope that I had presented a clear and persuasive and beautiful argument for you to say, yes, we will put this on Senator Leatherman's radar screen. We will blow political winds that if he tries to ignore, he'll at least have to comb his hair daily, because the wind is blowing so hard. So we ask you to rise up and reach out to Senator Leatherman as local constituents and let him know how important this is to you. that's locally what you can do. You can also reach out to Senator Rankin and ask him for help, and ask him to get it out of committee. There's a lot more I could talk about. You can sign up at Personhood. If you've got the forms there on your desk, you can put your name there if you want to be on our email list. We will keep you up to date. Right now we're directing folks to communicate with the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and ask him to move it out of committee. So we've got our finger on the pulse on what the immediate needs are as it's going through the Senate, and we'll keep you up to date and let you know about meetings and about phone calls you can make.